Years ago, before the internet, when it came to certain narratives that were passed along to us, people, of course, were a lot more limited in the way they could dig up information on something, such as a conspiracy theory. Access to informational resources was much more limited. And I'm struggling to find a new term for it because sometimes what is being discussed are not conspiracies, and sometimes they are not theories either. And there are times where the information that circulates among us is not, it's just not real. How many of you have heard the prophecy about 3 days of darkness? Well, that's not in the Bible. I'm not talking about what happened in Egypt during the 10 plagues. I'm talking about people think that there is a prophecy about 3 days of darkness coming during the end times. But that was just something told to a Catholic priest a long time ago that got passed along through the Catholic Church, or in other words, it went viral within the church and was ultimately dismissed until now, where it has resurfaced on the internet. Folks, I would say for the past 6 months or so, I have come to uncover many truths that I was either ignorant of or overlooked. There are also things that I became aware of for the first time. Let's just say I spent a lot of time pulling off the veil on several things that my mind questioned. And sometimes, folks, I think that what may block that is being afraid of the answers. So I want to discuss a few things today as we may have come to believe in certain narratives or ideas over time that in some cases started off as something else entirely. We are going to have to use greater discernment as we move forward and more information reaches us. Otherwise, we are going to find ourselves lost in confusion, or we become what is known as delusional. They call it the red pill, which is symbolic for awakening to the truth. When you become truly red-pilled, you will not only begin to see the truth about the world we live in, but the world we lived in, history. You will also begin to see the truth about other people and human behavior. I'm talking about an awakening across a very broad range of topics. Let me tell you what is happening right now. And you will begin to see this more and more if you pay close attention to those you listen to, alternative media, investigative journalists, truth media, people who would be considered part of what some people refer to as the truther community. People who you trust to get the best information from. I recently listened to an interview between Bart Sibrel and Mike Adams, and I just want to give you guys a little bit of what was discussed in that interview, as well as talk about some of the things that have been going on. What people are doing now is, because of everything that is going on, the lies through the media, people know they are not getting the whole story about what is happening in the Ukraine and Russia, how some of the photos and videos have been faked. People know they did not get and are not getting the whole story about the virus and everything that came with it. People know that governments around the world have been systematically breaking down society. The elections, what's the truth behind that? When someone lies to you, let's say someone was in a relationship with someone who lived a double life. Once that person finds out that their partner had been living a double life, they now go back and look at every single moment that seemed off or awkward. They go back and question the entire relationship, and that person ends up confused because they can't figure out what was real and what was faked. And that is what's happening to people now. They are coming to realize the deceit of the government and are now going back through history to re-idealize certain events. They are now really questioning those past narratives. And let me tell you, the reality is, it is no fun to discover later on that you have been living in a lie, that you were tricked. How many times in your life, folks, have you heard of the Apollo moon landings being faked? There are so many inconsistencies, right? Film footage, photographs, documents. I wouldn't be able to cover it all in one show because there is more than one Apollo mission to the moon. One would have to pull out the inconsistencies in all of them. Now, when I think about where I currently stand, I am only left with two possibilities in my head: that either the Apollo missions were completely faked, or they were real, but everything they presented to the public was faked as a cover-up. Either way, who in the world would feel comfortable about a lie like that? Do you guys know the type of engineering and computer power it takes for someone like Elon Musk to launch a rocket and land it within the Earth's atmosphere, mind you? Do you guys really know what it takes to do that? So how is it they were able to do that in the 60s, man, on the moon, without a supercomputer? They didn't even have touchscreen, just knobs and switches, old school push buttons. Yeah, they went to the moon all right. I mean, how did the Soviets stay ahead of us on everything that has to do with space? The first satellites, the first astronauts, the first lunar probes. They spend more money and time on space. They spend more time in space, but yet they didn't try landing on the moon. In other words, if they did somehow get to the moon, I don't think it was what we saw. The real moon mission was probably in a UFO where the captain was an alien. And I'm just joking around here, guys, but you get it. Let me tell you something else. Truthers out there. Those of you who are on YouTube and other platforms spreading awareness, if you are listening to this, let me ask you a question. Let's say you took a person on a rocket with you to show that person the true shape of the Earth. And you took that person up high enough and far away from the Earth enough to see the whole thing, and it turned out that the Earth was actually flat as a board. What do you think would happen in that person's mind? You'd probably see sparks and smoke coming out of the person's ears. There is a real psychological effect that would 9 times out of 10 damage that person. It would likely destabilize them. In the Matrix movie, when Morpheus was talking about how unplugging someone from the Matrix when they were too old was dangerous because the mind has trouble letting go. Well, there is more to it than that. After being exposed to the truth like that, the brain has a hard time processing what is real and what is fiction. You now have to manually rewire your brain for everything in the past to make sense now. People are looking back on the past now thinking, well, the government lied about this thing over here. What else did they lie about? What else was a front, stage play? And you know something? It is not all about what has been presented to us, but what the public has been presenting to the rest of us. We are way too quick to jump on the next great conspiracy theory or revelation. Think about this. Did you guys know that the Mandela effect started off as a joke? The person who coined the term even states that it was originally intended for people to have fun with the idea, not to go around on the internet telling everybody that the government has been changing reality behind our backs. And even when I tell you all this, some people are still going to stand behind it. Boy, the government sure is God, aren't they? They have the technology to do all this crazy stuff to us and around us, but at the same time, they can't go into space. or there is no space. Do you see what I'm talking about, folks? So I'm supposed to wake up from this crazy reality to enter into a crazier reality. When the plague hit us, you saw people putting on surgical masks and other face coverings, while at the same time, they were taking off the mask they were already wearing. During lockdown, some people got a good dose of what it was really like to be married. Some people found out about who they were really living with, you see? Even after that, during this whole experiment, you could see how people have been steadily divided on real science and what people are seeing on the news. And the news has been winning. I don't know how, which I will get into in another presentation. Think back on all the things of the past that might have been faked, all those events. Oklahoma City, the Twin Towers, the Boston Marathon, several mass shootings. You know what? I'm interested. Those of you who know of an event in history that gave rise to a conspiracy theory, let me know in the comments section. I will be there to read them. And I am sure many of you will know of some events many of us have never heard about. Now, I would like to bring up the moon mission for a moment again, because there is something that I want to emphasize again when it comes to things like that. And it may shine a light on another possible reason to present us with a hoax, or why they never went back to the moon since the Apollo missions anyway. For almost a decade, they had these Apollo missions, and they stopped them years before many of us were even born. And now they are talking about going back, and they are having a hard time figuring that out. Now, who told them to stop? Why didn't other governments who had similar technology back then, why didn't they keep going? Why didn't they pursue that quest? You know, we still live in a world where there are spirits. And I've said it before, a lot of what these government powers pursue, they have to get permission from these spirits to do these things. You know what's funny? SpaceX, their first few launches failed. It wasn't until NASA joined the party and SpaceX started giving reverence to the dragon that their launches started to really take off. Lies coming out of the government and the media, they do these things for control. How many of you remember years ago when television actually went off? At the end of the day's broadcast, you had a sign off accompanied with the national anthem. How many of you remember that? Well, back in the 60s, there was a particular sign-off broadcast that contained subliminal messages. They laid down commands in between the transition effect of the words fading in and out. What did those subliminals say? The same things the subliminals say in the movie They Live, believe it or not. Trust the government. God is real. God is watching. Rebellion is not tolerated. Obey, consume. Obey, consume. Worship, consume, believe. Do not question the government God. I'll link that video in the description. By the way, you can find this and a lot of information pertaining to the moon landings at cybrel.com, and I'll have that linked below as well. There is more to come, more to reveal. Be sure to visit woodwardentertainment.com and the Woodward Entertainment store. You can follow me on Instagram at JAEWoodward. Don't fall asleep now. Always stay awake, stay aware, stay safe, and I'll talk to you all soon.